Welcome everyone to the Ball Agenda Review Show. I'm joined on my left-hand side by Mr. Chinedu Asinugo. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. It's a great Sunday and I'm ready to talk football.
Let's do it. So we're going to start with a new segment for this new season called Back Pass, where we just do a quick fixture roundup of the games we saw this weekend across the leagues in Europe. I'm going to start with the game that we're all looking forward to, Man United versus Leicester. United finally losing their unbeaten record, stopping at 29. And we have to give them credit for going 29 games away from home unbeaten.
10 draws in that.
Yeah, of course. How many draws?
10.
10?
19
okay.
wins, 10 draws, yeah.
Okay, so very, very impressive record. Finally coming to an end at the King Power Stadium. And I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Mr. Chinedu Asinugo.
Okay, thank you very much. Very, very anticipated game. I think everybody went in kind of waiting to see, first of all, what Manchester United would do in terms of bouncing back, not in the best of form right now, but also to see what Leicester would do, because now they're trying to, make a claim as the top 14. And I think going into that game, Manchester United was outplayed in every single area of the field. Defensively, they looked very shaky. They rushed back Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw as well, struggling from injury, and looked very shaky. And then they had Matic, Pogba in midfield, and they were absolutely outrun by Tielemans and Maddison. It was almost like a walk in the park, where Leicester knew they were the better team, and they absolutely bossed the game. Every single five passes, they were able to split United's line and get Iheanacho in behind. And Iheanacho versus Maguire was just, it was funny to watch, but Maguire was really struggling. So I think all in all, Leicester deserved the win. Patson Daka comes on, does an amazing job stretching the defense and getting a goal to show for it as well. Jamie Vardy looked a handful the entire game. So I think Manchester United are in real trouble right now. They're struggling to find a bit of form and to find anything even going forward, because that's supposed to be their strong point, right? It's going forward. And they totally looked like they deserve to lose. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's great to see 3 points for Leicester, because they didn't really start the season off that strongly. And people have been questioning Brendan Rodgers, not necessarily even really giving him enough credit, given that he was missing majority of his back line. Castagna is now back looking good. It looked like they had a little bit better, a bit better. They just looked a bit better at the back. They had a defensive shape that was a lot better, and they also going forward seem to have a lot of ideas and not seem as static as they have in previous weeks. Jamie Vardy is hitting that purple patch of form, and I think that that's going to be really helpful for them in this next run of games. But also, like you mentioned, Daka coming in, Iheanacho also now starting to get some more game time and showing it on the field. I think Leicester might have finally just unlocked a little bit of form that might help them string together a few results, because they've been playing well. They've just not been having good results. And I think now actually scoring 4 goals at home and against a good side, I think was just the win that they needed. And on United side, yeah, keep going.
I was going to say, look at their squad as well, because you mentioned something that made me remember. They were able to bring on Vestergaard off the bench. Ayoze Perez made an appearance as well. So not just their starting level, but their actual squad looks very coherent, and they look like they've kind of plugged in those holes that they were lacking last season. Take note, this is without their so-called starting left back in James Justin, and this is without Fofana as well in at the back, but never missed a beat. It looked very, very good. And even, last thing to say, I was going to say, even looking at them as a unit pressing the ball, they look like they are well drilled on how to win the ball back, and not just win the ball back, but also retain the ball. Because every time Manchester United got the ball in the midfield area, Tielemans was pressing, Maddison was pressing, and immediately Vardy kind of covered up that space between the midfielder going back to the defender, right? And so it was a very, very, very well rehearsed game, and you could kind of see where Brendan Rodgers or kind of his style of play, how he wants Leicester to play. Because a lot of times people talk about haram ball. Yes, they play haram ball, but they're also able to kind of control the game when they want to. And this was without NDD as well in the midfield. So very, very impressed by that.
Yeah, and I think for United, I think there were a few bad decisions, at least from a personnel point of view. I don't think I've always every week I sit here and hear Emeka will ask Lyrical about Harry Maguire. I'm still not, and I know you're not fully sold, and I'm not really fully sold as to him being that great of a defender. But this was objectively a poor performance. But also we have to be fair in acknowledging that he was just coming back from injury and really shouldn't have been starting this game. So I don't know if that's a trust thing about Bailly and Lindelof playing together. But I think also when Varane comes back from injury, they'll drop Lindelof, even though Lindelof, I think, had a great game and is good and played a fantastic weak foot pass to get the equalizer for Rashford that doesn't get talked about enough. If Maguire did that, we wouldn't stop hearing about that forever. So I think that existed. I think in the middle of the park, Pogba and Matic, I don't know if that necessarily works. But it was good to see Matic get some game time because I do think he's the closest to an answer for control in that midfield. And I think it might be... I did see him lose it once in transition outlet to a good shot from Tillman that hit the post. But I think mostly United fans would probably be pleased by the fact that they were not really getting countered and ripped to shreds as often as in previous games. So the goals were from set pieces or really bad errors at the back. And I think that at least is something that you can work on the training field and is a lot easier to fix than just being very easy to counter-attack against. And then the other thing that I say is just there still seems to be some lack of cohesion up front. And we still don't know what the first 11 is. So those are things that you would expect that at this stage, Solskjær would have a much better idea of. And I think that that's to blame in some parts for the poor performances.
We can talk more later in that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to Southampton picking up their first win of the season, beating Leeds 1-0. What do you think about that game?
I watched parts of it, and I mean, Sutton, you would think that with the football that they played, they would pick up way more points across the season, but luck would have it, or I guess quality would have it, and they just haven't been getting the results. But very, very good to see them pick up their first 3 points of the season. I
totally agree.
I didn't watch the entire thing. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. The game that I think was actually the best game of the week was Aston Villa and Wolves coming from behind. What do you think about that game?
I think it's the
Black Country Derby.
Yes, I think it's the curse of the 2-0, right? So it's you get comfortable at 2-0 and most people in sports will tell you, even if it's a series, whatever it is, 2-0 is probably the most dangerous lead to have because you fall into a very complacent, for lack of better words, very complacent, mentality. And then once that one goal is scored, you panic. So 11 minutes to go in the game, Aston Villa is up 2-0, and Wolves, credit to their manager, they get that one goal. And from there, the game's done really because Aston Villa started panicking and you can see it and Wolves totally lost the game from there, equalized. And then very, very, very unlucky, 93rd or something minute to have, a deflected goal going from Ruben Neves. But I think all in all, I think Wolves deserves the 3 points because Aston Villa kind of rested on their laurels. 2 goals up, they should have been controlling the game and they weren't able to. And I think Wolves deserve the 3 points. Very unlucky though to concede in that fashion. But
yeah, just to point of correction, Black Country Derby is West Brom and Wolves, but I don't remember what the Derby Villa Wolves is called. But I know it's some sort of derby.
There's a lot of derbies this week.
There's so many. But I think I really, really like how both of these teams play, and I think that larger ball is actually in full effect now, and the possession game that Wolves play is just really, really beautiful to watch. And Traore is still a menace. They're able to rest Jimenez. They could actually bring stuff off the bench. What are you gonna say?
No, I was just going to say if Traore can work on his finishing, he probably scores Puskas 1 or 2 times a year.
Yeah, because he always beats 5 players and then
yeah,
the shot isn't just quite right. Yeah, no, him. But also Villa, like they have a very, very, very clear plan when they go forward, and this is without people like Leon Bailey out. They have Danny Ings, who's a proven goal scorer. They have John McGinn making those late runs. They have different solutions up front with the industry and the industry and honestly quality as well of Ollie Watkins and being able to have some depth also up front is something that Villa have typically lacked, and there always seem to be an over reliance on Jack Grealish. But now it seems like there's a system. We've always known about Cash and Target getting forward, but the system that they play now allows them to do that without really exposing the back line too much, because now they play House and Mings and Konza, so they have a little bit more protection at the back. So I think Dean Smith has worked out a good formation that allows them to be pretty defensively solid and also still have that attacking threat and not be over reliant on any one player. And for Wolves, that possession game, I'm just really, really such a fan of. And then now starting to see, obviously, this game was 2 defenders scoring, but they don't just rely on Raul Jimenez, because in previous times, what killed them last season was a system that really relied on Jimenez and Jota. They lost Jimenez, and now they're struggling for goals. Traore is playing really well. You have people like Podence now back from injury and contributing. When Neto gets back, that's going to be another person as well up front. Huang that they've brought in has adapted very quickly. So they have people like Fabio Silva, who is still finding his feet. Like there's just so many options up front for what they can do, and I think I'm actually very excited for Wolves. They're actually a team that I'm most excited to see this season, how that comes together.
Yeah, and I just to emphasize, I like how you talked about their young talent, and I think they have one of the most talented young group of players coming up and getting good game time and quality minutes, right, in the Premier League. So very exciting for them, and I'm really, really excited to see what they're able to do this season. And that's without, like you said, if you think back to Nuno's time at Wolves, they were known for basically Jimenez ball, right? Ball out wide, get that cross in, Jimenez is scoring goals. But now they look a much more fluid team. And I think it's going to benefit them even more, because now they can break down different styles of like teams that they're playing against. So very exciting.
I totally agree. Very quick nod to Man City Burnley 2-0. I think I'm just very happy because I'm very happy because Sean Dyche finally decided not to play 4-4-2 and play 4-5-1 and actually choke up the midfield. And they actually looked very dangerous in certain parts of the game, but also were just a lot more difficult to break down, as evidenced by the scoreline. And I said it like last couple seasons and last season, and it seems super basic. But against City at the Etihad, you can't just give up the midfield. You will give up the midfield, but you can't just give it up.
You can't just willingly,
And when you do that, you're asking for trouble. So everyone expected Burnley to lose, but they kept it respectable. They fought hard. They had a couple good chances. And
I think they were undone by an early goal, right?
Yeah.
So typically they would like to soak up the pressure, maybe not concede that early goal and what am I thinking of? Yeah, just sneak something in. But they got undone by an early goal, and that kind of forced them to actually play, a bit more expansive. And I'm sure Sean Dyche would have wanted to. But like you said, very, very well set up in terms of choking up the midfield and having Chris Wood as that focal point. And so big ups on them for not conceding 5 goals.
Yeah. What do you think about Brentford and Chelsea?
Okay, I'm sorry you were lagging a bit, but I think
Brentford and Chelsea. What do we think?
That game, I'm very, very happy I watched from start to finish. What I would call a game of two halves. Although Brentford were very, very unlucky to concede in the first half, but I think Chelsea, kind of did what Chelsea does with what we call haram ball. Is they suffocated Brentford, they controlled the game, got their passes in at the back. And they look very much in control. Chilwell goes on and scores an absolutely beautiful goal. And so Brentford goes into the half, one goal down. And I think, battle of Thomases, because these are two very, very good managers in Thomas Frank and Thomas Tuchel. And I think they're always very quick to understand what's going on in the game and tweak things based on that. And so Brentford comes out second half. I don't think they really clicked to like around the 60th minute, but from the 60th minute onward, if this is the Brentford we see every week, they finish top 10. They absolutely bossed the game, got 17 shots up against a very, very well coached and very well drilled Chelsea side. And people can talk about Sarr and obviously Chalobah in there, and they're not, first team starters. But
I think really is Christensen.
Christensen, sure, you can argue that. But I don't think it was a thing of individual errors or individual mistakes. I just think Brentford was so good. And this then leads us to talk about Mendy and where he stands in that debate for top keeper in the league, because I think he played out of his mind.
I'm actually on the other side of the fence on that argument.
Did you watch that game?
Yes, I did. What saves do you call when you make that? Like, I'm just people are blowing it out of proportion.
I don't think so. I think he was.
He didn't make any save I don't expect him to make. Really.
I can see you say that, but at the end of the day, I think it comes down to number one, positioning, because a lot of people don't talk about that when you talk about keeping, right? So the positions he took up to make those saves, I think, are very, very underrated, right? When he makes the save, like really, really up close against, I think it was in Bournemouth or someone, who he basically smothered the ball and didn't give them a chance, didn't give them any, angle to aim at. The one where there's an overhead kick and he makes a fantastic reactionary save. Not a lot of keepers save that. Not a lot of keepers save that.
That shot was straight at him.
Not exactly, and that's where I talk about positioning. It's straight at him, but it was actually to the corner of the goal. It wasn't straight at the goal. So a lot of keepers might not have taken up that position to make that save. Very, very underrated trait, but I think his positioning is fantastic and he gives himself the best chance to save the ball. Very, 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 very good performance from Mendy. But I think, and even the commentator said it, right? These are the games that title challenges are mounted on, right? The games where you grind out that 1-0 lead. Every single tackle is cheered on, every single save is cheered like it's a goal itself. And those are the stuff that build that resiliency. Now, Sarr has the confidence that they kept the clean sheet. Chalobah again, fantastic showing. And Chelsea are in a really, really good position that even when they're outplayed, they can win games. I think that's always a good sign of a title-winning team.
Totally agree. Very great analysis there. What do we think about the 12:30 kickoff, 5-0 Liverpool away from home? And what do we think about
magnificent move?
The Tinkerman's prospects? Actually, I know that's where you want to go to, and I don't know why you really like. He's a good player, but I think I'll put my praise mostly on Sadio Mane for reaching 100 Premier League goals and for being only the third player in history of the Premier League to do so without a single penalty. So wow. I have to put the props on Sadio.
Yeah. Props on Sadio, especially given the stick he's gotten this season. I think he's getting to that point where he's become a victim of his own standards, right? Where people expect so much from him and they don't realize he's actually still playing really well. So credit to him, credit to Bob. I mean, Bobby got a hat-trick, so we can't leave him out of our mouths, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was a great Liverpool performance. Watford couldn't get a foot on the ball. But also, I don't know if it was a great Liverpool performance or just a very sorry Watford performance. There was some defending that was abject, to put it as nicely as possible. Danny Rose had one of the worst games from a left back that I've ever seen in terms of being 3 yards behind the offside line, playing people onside, being very weak in challenges that lead to goals, and just positionally just being completely out of just not concentrating. And I think the magnitude of the job that's in front of Claudio Ranieri is one that I don't think he's ever seen before. And I'm curious what you think his prospects are for this season, because now I think they are in my favorites to go down. I start to think Norwich, Watford, and someone that I don't know yet that I'm still waiting to see. But that's
I mean Norwich, they look like they're sure to go down, which is very sad for them, given that it just came up. And Burnley, they're always going to be in that scrap. I think they will survive it, but I think Watford go down as well, just because I think they have a very, very decent attacking lineup in Dennis and Sarr, but I think defensively, like you said, they don't look like they're up for the challenge. And at the end of the day, defense wins titles, right? That saying has run true for lots of years. And obviously, we're not expecting Watford to win a title, but when you go up against the likes of Mo Salah and Sadio Mane and Bobby Firmino and Diego Jota, they're going to rip you to shreds. And that's week in, week out. I'm looking at their schedule, and come November 7th, they have a run of Arsenal, Man United, Leicester, Chelsea, and Man City, followed by Brentford. So
they're definitely going down as far as I'm concerned.
So by December 11th, I expect
they could be bottom at Christmas.
Yeah, I expect that we know that they'll be that whoever came up with this schedule
is an evil person.
So yeah, I don't see them doing very well, and I don't think it'd be up to Ranieri. I also think
Troy Deeney came up with that schedule.
Yeah, because I think credit to Ranieri for the manager that he is, but there are some things that are kind of just beyond you as a manager, and maybe some investment comes in January. I don't know who their ownership is, but I think maybe some investment comes in January. They're able to mount a last minute comeback, but I think by December they're gone.
And I'm curious also what you thought about the sacking of Cisco Munoz.
I think it's always I thought it was mutual consent or mutual agreement.
I mean, Mourinho has left many clubs by mutual agreement, but we all know what mutual agreement means. Yeah, but it wasn't even. They said they decided to part ways because they see a trend of negative, whatever they said. They just had a very silly 3-line statement and said they see a trend of blah blah blah. Even though it was 7 points from 7 games at that point, 2 wins from 7 games. They're on track. That's a point a game, they're on track. That's 38 points for a season. That keeps you up. But so I was just curious what they saw, especially for someone that just brought you up, to pull the trigger in October.
I think they are victims of, I want to say, ambition, right? Because they don't just sack Cisco, they also bring in Claudio Ranieri, who has won a Premier League title with Leicester, as the underdogs. So I think they're kind of victims of ambition, and maybe they felt like they wanted to be higher up on the table, and they didn't realize that maybe they were actually overperforming what their squad had to offer. So I think they've actually not made the worst signings, because they brought in, for instance, Musa Sissoko from Spurs, who I think is a great addition to the team. They have, like I said, Dennis and Sarr, who are very exciting players to watch. But then at the back, I'm looking and they have Kakak and Troost Ekong, and I'm pretty sure Troost Ekong got relegated with a team West Brom. What? But those people don't keep you at 10th.
And Danny Rose.
Don't keep you. And Danny Rose, who obviously got done away with, at Spurs. So those people don't really do much for you. And then they're bringing in Cleverly, and you say, okay, what do you really want to achieve? So long story short, I think they were kind of victims of their ambition, and sacking Cisco was definitely not the best thing for them, because I think he did the best with what squad he had, but they also felt like maybe they needed to be higher up the table, so they bring in Ranieri, and he's going to take some time to get settled in.
Maybe they saw this period and they were just doing some very shorthand thinking and thinking they could new manager bounce through these difficult results.
Yeah.
But they'll find out there's new manager bounce and there's new manager bounce.
Yeah. The Premier League is not like that. They will struggle. And I actually struggle to find where their results will come from. I'm looking through now. I struggle to find where they'll actually pick up points. But yeah, good luck to Ranieri. I don't think he gets sacked, though. I think he makes it through the season. But I think they go down as well.
Awesome. What do you think about Norwich Brighton? No.
That's actually a game I did not watch, so I don't think I can speak on. Do you have any thoughts?
I think it's just, it's good. Norwich haven't conceded in their last 2 games, but they also still haven't won. So I think it's good that they're starting to at least focus on the defensive aspect of things and actually just stop shipping goals. But it's one of those things where, especially when you play people that you're also in a relegation battle with, and they say it's a 6-pointer and it's a draw, it's just not that helpful for you. Draws don't save you from relegation. So the sooner they can get 3 points, the better. And then that's just kind of obvious speak. But I'm really struggling to see where the goals are going to come from. And it's a funny, well, not that funny for them, but it's just an interesting dilemma, because we know that Daniel Farker wants to play this free-flowing football and try to score goals and try to be on the front foot, and he knows what he always gives away by doing that defensively. So I think now there's kind of a change in mentality, because this is usually where you kind of write them off in the season and they just continue losing games and go down. It's kind of a change in mentality, and he's now starting to think a little bit more pragmatically, exactly. And I'm just curious to see how that plays out over the next few games. But it's not that much to glean from the game.
Yeah,
Brighton continued that great start.
I was going to say, I typically enjoy watching Brighton play, and obviously, we've waxed lyrical about Potter ball and how attractive they play. And I think, they are a team that a little bit, like a little more investment in them, and I think they're going to be, proper mid-table, no relegation battle at all. And it's interesting because I think Tariq Lamptey came back in that game, so it'll be very interesting to see how he fits in, with Veltman playing on the rights already, and then bringing in Cucurella, who I think is a fantastic addition to the team. So, very, 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 very good Brighton team, I think, for where their ambitions are. I think they have a very, very solid team.
Awesome. We saw some games today. West Ham picked up very important 3 points at Goodison Park, and Tottenham picked up very important 3 points at St. James's Park. We saw that the new owner bounce this time wasn't enough to get Newcastle through, and we haven't really spoken about that takeover, but I'm curious what you think that prospects are for the rest of the season. I won't ask you about managers because I know that's a very, very tough question to ask right now.
For this season specifically?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I think I don't think anything changes this season. I don't think they are. You mean in terms of owner bounce?
Like what do you think the prospects are for Newcastle this season? Because obviously all hands have to be on deck to ensure that they do not go down. They cannot afford to go down with this. But also, what do you think? Well, I'm not going to ask you about the manager because that could change tomorrow. This was his 1,000th game, so we knew what to kind of expect in terms of they probably wouldn't sack him before it. But I don't want to ask about the manager. What do you think Newcastle can do this season? What do you think they might try to do in January, and then just in terms of the overall season outlay? But I'm almost certain they won't go down.
Why do you say that?
Because depending on where they are by December and January, they'll spend enough cash to keep them up.
I can agree with that, but that's where I thought, and this is just my understanding of the rules of the game, but financial fair play comes in. And that's why I said maybe nothing changes this season. On an investment level, I don't know if they can pump that much cash into Newcastle this season.
Mm-hmm.
I may be totally wrong. But FFP, right? So they haven't made enough money over the last number of years to actually have that sort of investment come in just out of the blue. Random cash pops up and they spend it. So I think if they're able to survive this season, then going into next season, they sell a few players, then they can invest.
Yeah, I think what I heard is that they've made, I can't remember exactly what the numbers were, but I know that Mike Ashley has run the club at a profit for the last 3 years or for the last few years, and you're allowed to carry 3 years of losses.
Okay.
For any FFP kicks in. So my understanding is they have free reign for the next 3 years, starting now, to spend whatever they want, and then anything can kick in later. So,
if that's the case, If that's the case, then like you said, right, come January, they're splurging.
So that's why I don't think they go down. They can't.
Yeah, because then that makes sense, because I was looking at this from an investment level, and I said, okay, apart from the fact that Newcastle is a historically, rich clubs in terms of, one of England's top clubs in the 90s and before that. I think this was a bad time to invest in Newcastle because they're not doing so well and they don't look like, currently they sit at 19th. So I thought, okay, maybe these guys have another plan, in place because FFP kicks in this season, or FFP stops them from buying people this season, I'm sorry. But if they can't spend, then I think come January, they have a new coach. We don't have to go into details of who that is, but I think come January, they have a new coach and they have a new backline at least. Because going forward, they're not so bad in terms of Premier League quality, right? So you have St. M, you have Willock who's chipping in the goals from time to time, and you have Callum Wilson, who I think they're very, very good players. Joelinton, he has his days. So I think they end up right outside that relegation zone. Hopefully not in the trap of things, but I think they end up right outside that relegation zone. And then come the summer, they spend, but they can only, I think in terms of spending, even when you look at City and how they climbed, I think they can only spend enough to get them to 7th and maybe a cup run at best. And then when you start getting those profits in, you start developing that, big club mentality, then they spend some more, in the next 2 years. But I think for now, their main thing is come January, how are we out of 19th place and how are we into maybe 14th? I think their best finish would be a 14th place.
Yeah, no, I think that, it's interesting because yes, they have to kind of build. It's not just they're not going to be challenging for the Champions League next season, but the fact that I think that they can spend, basically I think it's just an accelerated timeline of what City ended up spending. So City ended up spending on the magnitude of what Man United spent, but they just did it quicker. And I think what City ended up spending, Newcastle can just do it quicker. And that's why I think that, I mean, I don't know exactly how soon they'll be challenging for things, but for this season, I think the goal is just give us the platform to move. We're not going to challenge for the top 4 this season. We're already behind in that. We're not going to challenge for Europe. Let's just get a good platform, stay in the Premier League, and then start building.
And it'd be a catastrophe if that doesn't end up working, because if you even think about it, like people coming in January, let's say they bring in 4 or 5 players, that's almost changing your entire starting 11. How cohesive can they be before the end of the season? So it'd be very interesting to see. And that's why I think they will also change the manager as well. Because if you're bringing in players with a higher caliber, you expect that you bring in a manager that can also manage them off the field and on the field. So I think it's very interesting to see how quickly they can pivot, right? And be able to say, okay, this is where we are now. We're bringing in all these people to get us to a further position, and how quickly can they actually make that impact? Because it's not that easy. Because I'm guessing they wouldn't be recruiting from the Premier League either.
I think that's actually a show that we can have in terms of who would be good people to recruit from the Premier League. But I think that there want away stars at certain clubs that I think could be good fits for.
But I want away stars,
especially at the start of the project, because there's going to be 2 phases. No one wants to be in the first phase, which is the transition and bringing us from where we are to when we start to challenge. Basically, the Robinho phase where you're the marquee people that we bring in now, but when we actually kick on, it's a different set of stars that we bring. So no one wants to be in that first phase. But I think there are a few people that are ideal for that first phase right now to help them solidify themselves in Premier League, challenge a bit more higher in and just go higher in the table. And then that next phase is probably the next injection of cash that actually makes them European contenders, is my belief.
Yeah, that's a good point. And when you said want away stars, Mickey, first person that comes to mind
we know
right now is Sterling. No, I don't know who's it for.
Oh, I was gonna say Wilf.
Wilf?
I think that's 2 players. You play Sterling in the 10, play Wilf on the right.
That's 2 players,
but Max on the right and Wilf on the left.
That ball will be insane, by the way. Wilf, Sterling, and St. M, insane ball. But no, I was going to say I don't see Sterling going from the likes of, because you said no one really wants to be in that.
But it's he won't be in the first. I don't think he wants to be in the first.
So Wilf is a good shout.
If you promise him enough cash, and to be, if you promise him enough cash and to be the face of the project, honestly, money talks these days. And he's a person that could probably bring other stars to the club.
Yeah, you're right. But that we could always talk about that.
That's awesome. Let's move to the next segment that's called Cutback, which is when we look at one take that we saw either on Twitter or just in the social media world, and we give our thoughts on why we think that that's not entirely accurate. For me this week, it was Paul Scholes saying that Chelsea have the weakest defense of the top four sides in the Premier League. And I wanted to, one, get your thoughts on that, Chinedu, but I think he went on to say United had a good pairing, Varane Maguire. Liverpool had a good pairing. I think he was just thinking about Van Dijk and just assumed that they have whoever. And Man City have a good pairing as well. And I'm curious what you think about that take.
Obviously, a very, very, very bad take given what we've seen this season. And so even if you went by stats alone, I mean, Chelsea have only conceded, what was it, the one?
3 goals, I think, all season.
No, I mean from open play. I think yeah. So 1 from open play and then one penalty and I think 1 set. I forget what the second goal was. Maybe 2 penalties even. But they've only considered the 1 goal from open play. So just looking already, you know that that's a horrible take for you to come and say the team with the best defensive stats in the league have the worst defense of the top 4. But I at first, and I told this to
and it's not just goals, also big chances. Chelsea don't really tend to concede.
They don't exactly. At first, I tried to understand where he was coming from in terms of maybe saying individual quality. But even on an individual quality basis, I think personally, Rudiger is a better defender than Harry Maguire is. And whoever you pair with Van Dijk, except you're saying, Konate at his best, which we haven't seen Konate in the Premier League, so I can't call Konate. But whoever you're pairing with Van Dijk, Rudiger is a better defender than him. Thiago Silva is a better defender than half of the people that he's going up against. So I think it's an absolutely absurd take. And like Fayem said, off call, but a lot of these pundits don't actually watch the games and they have this impression of maybe Rudiger from 2 years ago or Rudiger from 3 years ago. And even look at Christensen on an individual basis, he's doing the same thing for Denmark. Denmark, their qualifying, their World Cup qualifying record, it's absolutely insane. I think played...
I think it's like 8 clean sheets or something.
Absolutely insane. Yeah. And so you look and you say, where are they coming from all this? And I think Bayern is the man with the stats. So you can talk.
Yeah, I think it's also the other stat that I had to rebut that is that Edouard Mendy is the 4th fastest keeper to 20 clean sheets in the Premier League. And he's done it in 38 games. And
insane.
Only... it just helped me remember how crazy it was what Mourinho did in 04-05 because Petr Cech has 20 in 26 games. But for him to be the 4th fastest ever in this period that you're mentioning them as having the worst defense, I think is also just further proof and evidence that, and we also see with United's clean sheet record, that just absolutely doesn't make
sense. And the only team that might come close to them is City, right? But I think very, very, very clear in terms of like styles of, like Man City, a lot of times they actually do have defensive lapses and errors, but I think they control games so well that those things are mass, right? Chelsea, a lot of times, even when they are put under the coach, even when they are facing a lot of pressure, they're able to get out of the situation. So I think those are the 2 best teams in the league when it comes to defenses. But it's absolutely absurd to suggest that Manchester United or even Liverpool, maybe they try, but I think the attacking prowess is what gets them out of the situations. They're bagging goals. You have to stop them. Attack is the best form of defense, right? So you have to stop them on the attack first before you can talk about even launching your own attack. But when you talk about Manchester United, I don't know what the other teams in the top 6 are, if that's Spurs or if that's Leicester, and nobody comes close to doing the kind of things Chelsea is doing right now in the defensive aspect. So I think absolutely absurd take from Paul Scholes.
Awesome. And to bring us to our last segment of the day, tactically speaking, where we do a deep dive on one thing that we've noticed either in the game or from a team that we like, and we just talked a little bit about it. Today's tactically speaking segment is on fixing Manchester United's poor form recently, and I'll shoot it over to you, Chinedu, for your thoughts on what Mr. Solskjær might look to try in these next coming weeks with the tough fixtures ahead.
I'll actually first of all give you uno reverse and actually tell you to first of all give your opinion, and then I'll wrap us up.
Say that again?
I said I'll do Uno reverse for you
Okay.
and give it straight back to you and ask you to what are your thoughts on what Manchester United can do to improve, and then I think I can wrap us up and give my thoughts as well.
Okay.
Sorry to throw you under the bus like that. But
oh no, absolutely. I know you don't come prepared.
I'm very busy. If there's one thing I'm prepared for, is this.
I think the first thing that he needs to figure out is his starting lineup. I think dominant teams of old, and even Guardiola is probably the only person who really can point to us doing this. But we saw it with Klopp, played the same 11 pretty much every single game. Mourinho was known for knowing his first 11 and putting the strongest team out week in, week out. Like dominant teams of old have a first 11 and we know what it is. We still think that Solskjær hasn't figured that out. I think the problem in the market that should have been fixed was a holding midfielder. They didn't quite go out for one. So I think now what needs to be, because they don't have the personnel to do it, I think it's a shape thing. And I think Solskjær really needs to work on coaching a little bit more. Obviously, I cannot be giving Solskjær advice because he's more experienced than me.
Solskjær, watch this.
He's more experienced than me, so I don't understand like, if I was there, I'd be doing better. But it seems like every attack, and Emeka's touched on it a little bit, every attack seems like
vibes,
an attack. If that, like, every time they have the ball, it seems like it's an attack and it's just full throttle going forward. And so there's never any element of control in the game. So United never seem to be able to control the midfield. And what that means is that they're always chasing and they're very easy to counterattack against because they throw bodies forward. There's never really a shape. So it's individual brilliance being relied on. But when you lose the ball, because there isn't anything coached in terms of shape, positioning, in terms of where players are supposed to be and patterns, even though people don't necessarily like that word, I think when they're attacked, they're always overloads. And we saw it against poor teams even last season in the Europa League. People like Roma were exploiting, even though they lost handsomely. Like we saw these spaces being exploited in transition. And I think that's as a result of just the attacking side of the game not having any structure to it. And defensively, I think they got away with some inspired De Gea performances, which are still happening. And all this talk about Rolls Royce, Varane. But I think that if they continue with this, they're going to continue to be exposed because now their clean sheet record is telling. And some of the wins that they've had have been entirely lucky wins, especially if I think back to Wolves where they played off the field and counter-attacked actually quite easily against. So now that we no longer have the unbeaten record to kind of paper over the cracks, I'm curious to see what solutions he comes up with for United going forward. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well as we wrap up.
No, very, very, very well said, fans. Like, especially given that you weren't prepared.
I'm always prepared. Always.
Yeah, no, I trust. Our number one analyst. So I have a number of things to say, especially, I don't say especially being a United fan, because even if you weren't a United fan, I think the problems are clear as day. If you watch football, you know the plethora of problems that United face. Well, I'd say number one, and I try to streamline, so I'm actually reading off what I want to talk about because I have so many things. But I say number one is personnel, and it's understanding the personnel that you have. So I say this because that ties into shape, right? So Ole knows, for instance, he has Wan-Bissaka on one side of his defense, he has Luke Shaw on the other, and then whoever is that centre back pairing, whether it's Varane, Maguire, Varane, Lindelof, whoever, right? And we all know, I think it's clear as day that Wan-Bissaka is a liability going forward. He simply cannot do that. I think a good manager, and we always go back to Ole and his experience, but a good manager will be able to understand. A good manager will be able to understand that when you have kind of a liability there, you have to find a way to fill in that hole. So for instance, what Pep would do, which I'm assuming he would do, is, and he does sometimes with Kyle Walker, is leave Kyle Walker at the back and find a way to build with Luke Shaw getting to the midfield or Luke Shaw keeping the width and someone else. Do you get what I'm saying? So kind of when you're building out, have a three at the back as opposed to actually having Wan-Bissaka still attack, even though he's not very strong at attacking. So I think it's Ole.
I think it's similar to what we saw with Spain at the Euros.
Who was the right back?
Building more with Spinazzola and then having
You mean Italy?
I forget Italy. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. Di Lorenzo.
And having Di Lorenzo tucking into the
perfect.
Team. Yeah.
You have your two in Chiellini and
the more
and
comfortable
Bonucci.
attacker. Yeah.
Comfortable, very, very comfortable sitting back. You put a third man in there and you build out with the remaining people on the field, with the other 6 players. And you ask Spinazzola whether it's keep that width or sometimes come into the midfield and kind of play as that false midfielder. City does it all the time with Cancelo because he's so technical and adept on the ball, comes into the midfield to play. And so I think it's Ole being able to understand his personnel and say, okay, Wan-Bissaka, you're not good at attacking, but you're amazing at defending. Sit back, defend, and we build that with the other people we have. He's not able to do that. You spoke about this as well in terms of retaining possession. Manchester United cannot retain possession. They cannot complete 5 or 6 passes and kind of just control the game. So they always end up being frantic and playing at the pace of whatever team they're playing against. And I think it also comes down to their press. And
I was going to say, I'm very glad you talked about that, yeah.
Being able to win the ball back, because you look at teams like Man City and Liverpool that we talk about controlling the game, even Chelsea now, Tuchel's Chelsea, they press so well that they get the ball back within 5 seconds of using it and they go again. They control the game again. Manchester United, they don't know whether to press or whether to sit back. And lots of times there's a very, very gaping hole between, if you watch the games, let's say Bruno is the first man to press because Ronaldo doesn't press right now. Bruno is the first man to press. He's calling everybody forward to press with him. But by the time they react, whatever team it is has played out from the back and beat that press. And now there's a gaping hole in the midfield. So whoever the defensive coach is, right, needs to work on their press. And that would in turn translate to being able to retain the ball and keep the ball and keep a better shape. And then the last thing I'll touch on
because I saw a very, very interesting thread that was posted on Twitter about the build-up, the 3-2 build-up that Rodgers used to kind of break United's press that just always left the wingers, Greenwood, Sancho unsure about whether to press the outside CBs or press the man on the ball fullback. Or the people even trying to receive. And I think it just doesn't seem as coordinated a pressing effort from the attackers.
Not at all.
So it's an individual
press.
Yeah.
It's an individual press and even playing football, you will know that individual pressing is probably the worst thing in the world because you're always isolated. They can form a triangle around you and just keep you running around. So until I think we work on that press and having those triggers, Man City, they usually press when they lose possession, but in games where they are playing with Liverpool or someone that is able to retain possession, they have those triggers for when they press. Manchester United does not have a trigger for when they press. They press when they feel like they want to press. That doesn't cut it on the big stage. And then I also fault it very, very largely, and I've never been Ole out. I've never pushed that agenda at all because I'm trying to operate with a bit of cautious optimism. But I'd say his in-game management is one of the worst I've ever seen. And I say this because you look at the likes of, even look at Thomas Tuchel, and it was so fascinating to watch because I watch Chelsea a lot now because I'm like, what are they doing wrong? What are they doing? When Tuchel first came, I actually didn't expect him to be successful. On all my group chats, I said, this new manager bounce, whatever. But I watched them now with a very, very, very keen mind. And when Chelsea were up against Brentford, he actually actively made a sub in the 78th minute. They lost control of the game for about 5 minutes, and he made a sub. He brought on Havertz for Lukaku because
which he
shouldn't have done, but it was proactive.
Yeah.
Because he understood that they were losing that midfield battle. Lukaku was kind of becoming isolated. And so he brought on Havertz with the hope that Havertz could help them, retain the ball more and start, dominating the midfield again. It didn't quite work, right? But
he's not afraid to take those risks and be proactive.
Not afraid to take those risks.
And,
think back to Saul and his game. Took him off at halftime. No sentiment involved. Took him off at halftime. Ole struggles. And I'd say Manchester United as a club, they struggle with that whole sentiment value. No reason in the last game Sancho should have come off instead of Messi Greenwood or Ronaldo even. But when you look and you say sentimentally, Ronaldo should stay on the field for 90 minutes. No, because the better managers understand that you have to sacrifice those sentiments to get the results. And I don't think they're at that point yet. And so I fault his in-game management a lot. And I think it cost a lot of games. So to summarize, I think with the personnel that Manchester United have, I think they can work on building out from the back a lot better. A lot of times when you talk about Matic and Pogba and them losing possession a lot of times, there was never a time when Leicester City midfielders received the ball and they were unsure where their next pass was going to be. Manchester United kind of figured that out as they go. So Pogba receives the ball, Matic receives the ball, he turns, he looks around, oh, where's the next pass? That's not what top teams do. Top teams know where the next person is supposed to be. And if that person is not there, I remember, last thing, I remember when Trent had a game where he crossed, I think, 12, 13 times, none of them connected. And post-match interview, they asked Klopp, what do you think about it? He said, Trent did his job. It was on the attackers to get there and to be there. And if the attackers are not there, Trent is getting that ball in regardless. I'm saying this because you have to work on those patterns of play that Pogba, Matic receives the ball, Varane receives the ball, whoever receives the ball, and you know where their next pass is because they've rehearsed that, they kind of have an idea. And that's something that's lacking at Manchester United.
And I will be the first to say that there is some element of that, at least with Pogba and Bruno Fernandes, because there are times when I actually see Pogba play a pass like over the top, without looking, and Fernandes
when the ball goes back to him
exactly, the ball is just coming back to him. Fernandes knows that's the trigger to go. So I do know that has been worked on in training.
That's two players
but I don't see it elsewhere. Yeah,
that's two outfield players on a team of 10 outfield players.
Yeah.
I don't see it elsewhere. A lot of times you look at Luke Shaw and what made him so successful last season, I think, were those overlapping runs. And now it looks like he's almost confused on, okay, do I make that overlapping run or make an underlapping run? And bro, the pace of the Premier League, you have a split second to make those decisions, right? So even look at City on their right-hand side, let's say Mahrez is playing. As soon as Mahrez cuts inside, Kyle Walker knows immediately to make that overlapping run. Not the same at Manchester United. Someone cuts on the inside, Wan-Bissaka is on short, do I go forward, do I sit back? Ends up being a pass that's short. It's not fluid, and it can only get you so far. Because like you said, and like everyone says,
you'll crush the Watfords, the Norwiches of the Premier League.
Because you're better than them on an individual basis. Yeah. But when you meet a team,
it's well organized. That isn't even that much better Brentford. Than you. Like Brentford, like Everton.
Yeah.
They'll probably win the game just because United know how to just win like games that just somehow.
Not anymore.
There's and I like just that element of like that Wolves game was just exactly like that, where they have no right or reason to win the game, but they just somehow pull it out of the bag. But we've already seen a couple instances like Everton, like Leicester, teams that are well organized, are better than you on paper, but your basically individual brilliance kind of breaks down because they're too well organized for the spaces to be there exploited. Or to be exploited. So awesome. If you want to close us out, give us a little closing anthem.
Of course. So just a reminder to leave agendas at the door, and when you analyze the beautiful game, share your expert opinions or do a topical deep dive actually. Ask yourself, what should they ask themselves, please?
Do I really know ball?
Thank you very much.
Good night.